Welcome back. Now, a report by the Commission for Gender Equality has revealed disturbing challenges faced by the Correctional Services Department. The Commission inspected correctional facilities and says it found evidence of overcrowding, a lack of understanding on how to cater for the LGBTQI+ community and mentally ill people. It also noted sexual assault in some prisons as some serious concern. For more on these findings, I am joined by the chairperson of that commission, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale. Advocate, thank you so much for joining us at News at Prime. Now, I guess maybe take us back a little bit to that inspection in September the CGE conducted at some of these correctional facilities. What were you expecting and what did you end up actually finding? Now, I know overcrowding was one of the key concerns, but what did that picture actually look like?
Martha, let me just start by giving context. We visited 6 correctional facilities in the country in 5 provinces: KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, Northern Cape, Free State, and Gauteng. And we went to 6 facilities. We actually wanted to put in a dipstick, which would give us a sampling picture of what the situation is like. And as you can imagine, overcrowding is a key issue. Our facilities cater for 104,000. It has got a capacity for 104,000 inmates. We stand at 155,000. So there's serious overcrowding. And that overcrowding is actually mainly on the side of the remanded inmates. You must remember the sentenced are separate from the remanded. So the remanded inmates are definitely overcrowded. In a cell sometimes that is supposed to cater for 20 people, it is not unheard of to find 50, 60 in that cell. So it's bad.
So even double the figures that we'd be expecting if we are, looking at 30 and they sometimes up to 60, that really does double it. But also with this overcrowding, Advocate, your report found that this is also leading to the spread of infectious diseases. Now, talk to us a little bit about the spread of infectious diseases, what kind of diseases we're talking about as well, and how are they treated in these facilities?
The facilities do have clinics and hospitals, but as you can imagine, they are actually not properly run because they to a large extent, the correctional services still relies on Department of Health to come in and provide those services for them. In fact, they've now moved and started to build their own pharmacies inside the facilities because they used to have to wait for the allocations by the Department of Health whenever the allocations happen within those districts. So they are trying slowly but surely to move away from there. So which means it will ease. But the diseases and infections, as you would imagine, it would be those as a result of overcrowding, as a result of poor hygiene. Because once there's overcrowding, then there's poor hygiene. Because the facilities that are supposed to mitigate some level of hygiene are actually overused, misused, or even not functioning. So there's hardly any facilities for proper upkeep with hygiene, especially on the remanded sections. And then again, we found with the violence that happens there, both sexual and physical violence, the thriving of gangs as a result of people wanting to survive sometimes in those environments. But I suppose as others also wanting to assert themselves as part of protecting themselves. So it has become a whole culture going on in our centers.
Speaking of this culture that has been created and is being cultivated there as well, speaking of gangs, speaking of sexual assault as well, where is the security? Where are the wardens?
In terms of international norms, and which South Africa has actually adopted, we're supposed to have one warden for every 2 inmates across the board, centers they're remanded. Unfortunately now we have one warder for 5 which in itself is saying the warder's hands are full. So when things happen, they're not able to respond as quickly as they should. In fact, one of the recommendations that we put to the commissioner yesterday was that they need to elevate, to knock on the right doors and go back to the portfolio committees and elevate their area of work, their focus in terms of correctional services to essential services. Because one of the challenges they're experiencing is that when people retire and resign and die, and posts take a long time to be filled, the turnaround time, he was saying to us, is your normal slow government turnaround time. And we said, no, that's not good enough. You need to elevate yourself to a level of essential services, because you cannot afford to have positions that are not filled in, because it's a security, a safety issue. It has got huge repercussions.
I'd like to unpack on some of these concerns that you've also highlighted in your report. For instance, this lack of understanding when it comes to dealing with members of the LGBTQI plus community, mentally ill people, and of course we've also spoken about the sexual assault in prisons. And according to the department, I think it's 1,805 sexual assault cases were registered in just 2023 alone. To go at it one at a time, this lack of understanding when we're looking at mentally ill people, what are the concerns there, and how are they being treated?
We said lack of understanding because there isn't any special facility where they are kept. So they are in the midst of everyone. And you can therefore really understand how additionally vulnerable they are. But secondly, the facilities where there is, your hospital facilities where people go for observation, whether they're able to stand trial and understand the proceedings in the case of trials going ahead, etc. The facilities are full, and therefore there are people who ought not to be in your normal center who are still there because the facilities are full. And why the facilities are full is because the correctional services relies on the Department of Health to make available beds when there is a bed for the person to go the other side, so that they are observed and confirmed and certified to not to be okay mentally. But it's not only that part of mental health that we were talking about. Also talking about your normal anxiety levels, your normal depression, and that comes mostly with women inmates who, as a result of having children and having left children at home, and a lot of them being caregivers beyond their children, they are usually caregivers of extended family members. They tend to get depressed and quicker and go into depression as a result of the impact of their incarceration to their families and other people outside.
Now, Advocate, just to play devil's advocate here, for someone who may be sitting at home, who's listening and thinking, we spend so much money also on our correctional facilities departments as well. And speaking of depression, this is a very serious issue as well. And playing devil's advocate here, some might say that, if those people didn't commit those crimes, they wouldn't be sitting in a prison where they are now depressed. Of course, it's going to be depressing to face the consequences of your criminal actions.
Yes, one could say that, but you must remember, in this case, in these instances, it's not about, you being depressed because you are incarcerated, but you being impressed because I suppose the result of your incarceration are actually impacting on your other loved ones, But the other thing is, at the end of the day, incarcerated or not, there's got to be a certain level of human dignity that our Constitution, Section 10 of our Constitution, has actually confirmed that we are all entitled to. So there's got to be that. You've got to serve your punishment, not have additional punishment. If I may give you an example, you have people who are up to 3 years awaiting trial. That for me is overboard, because now you are 3 years is a normal incarceration sentence for a very serious crime. Yet you have not even been tried and convicted or acquitted even. And then you have a second layer of people who are inside because of the poverty that they are in. People are actually unable to pay bail for as little as 300 rand. And therefore they are kept inside. So it's more complex in our country than that. But why I say it's more complex, we also have to, at all times, like you're saying, remember that they are there because some of them, they have committed very, very heinous and violent crimes.
Now, taking a look at some of those challenges that you've just highlighted now, Advocate, also considering that our facilities are full. South Africa is facing high crime problems that daunt citizens, obviously, on a daily. Yet we have a lack of space in our correctional facilities. Your report found that, for instance, in the Mangaung Correctional Services did not accommodate awaiting trial inmates, and it could only accommodate a maximum of about 2,900 inmates. So even if we get more boots on the ground and the men and women in blue make the necessary arrests and the criminal justice system works, but then where do these convicted criminals go?
That is such a critical issue, Matsa, that we spent time discussing yesterday. Commissioner Nthabiseng, who's the National Commissioner of Correctional Services, pointed out that, in fact, with all of these anti-crime campaigns, Operation Chanela and all of those that are undertaken, they get settled with huge numbers of people who have been arrested that they do not know what to do with. And we were saying, so what is wrong with building more prisons? Because at the end of the day, our reality is that our crimes are high. So people must not shy away from building more centers, so long as those centers will be rehabilitative and responsive, and the value chain will respect the human dignity enshrined in the Constitution. And he pointed out that, yes, to build a correctional facility of 3,000, for an example, that they are doing now in Northern Cape. You need a bulk services, you need assurance of electricity, you need all sorts of other behind-the-scenes preparations that, because of the poor state of our municipalities, they are unable to do that. Our municipalities are unresponsive to Department of Correctional Services. In fact, what we were saying was we need to call them, we need to call COCTA, we need to call so many other departments to come and say, what is going on? COCTA, are you aware? Because the whole system gets impacted by one system that is falling apart.
So, Advocate, would you say a multi-layered approach is what is needed here? Because the department says it's allocated about 4 billion rand to improve security and the living conditions of inmates. Sounds like a lot of money. Is that the solution to the problem? Or is it one of the solutions, and also that there needs to be more communication, like you say, between this department and municipalities as well?
Yes, it's actually just one of the solutions, because how do you provide security unless you are going to employ more warders, unless you are going to build more facilities or extend the existing facilities so that at least there's more room to actually make that security that you're providing efficient. One of the challenges that the correctional services facilities have is when remanded inmates go to court in the mornings for their cases, they are left with very, very vulnerable situations in the centers, where sometimes one warden is left with 20 inmates because all the others have got to accompany these inmates, because the dangers of flight are elevated when they are in court and on the way to court than when they are inside.
Thank you so much, Advocate. Sorry to cut you off there, but really do appreciate your insights this evening. That was Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale from the Commission for Gender Equality.